So, did you hear about the Quadrant Future Tek IPO? It's coming up next week and it seems pretty interesting.
Oh, yeah, I actually was just reading about that. It's a company focused on railway, tech, and specialty cables, right?
Exactly. They're into train control systems and, making those really specific cables. It's kind of a niche area, isn't it?
Definitely, it's not something you see every day. I think they are working on the Kavach system, which is an automatic train protection system. That sounds like pretty cutting edge stuff to me.
Right. That's the accident prevention system for Indian Railways, isn't it? I read they got a big order for that too. How much is it for again?
Yeah, you're right. I think it was an order from Chittaranjan Locomotive Works. It was a big one, something like 9,786.06 million rupees, including taxes. So definitely a significant chunk of business.
Oh, that's a huge amount. Well, what about the IPO details? What's the price range they're aiming for?
Well, the price band is set between 275 and 290 rupees per share. And the lot size for retail investors is 50 shares. So that's a minimum investment of 14,500 rupees.
Okay, so a relatively affordable entry point for retail investors like me. What about the overall issue size? I wonder how much they're trying to raise in total.
Actually, they're aiming to raise 290 crore rupees, and it's entirely a fresh issue, meaning there's no offer for sale component. So basically, they're issuing new shares, no existing ones being sold.
Gotcha, that makes sense. It seems like they're looking for fresh capital to fuel their growth and expansion. So, when exactly does this IPO open for subscription?
The subscription window opens on January 7th and closes on January 9th. So you have a 3-day window to apply for the IPO.
Okay, good to know. That's not much time. So, people need to be ready. And when's the share allotment expected?
The allotment is expected on January 10th, so just the day after the issue closes. Hopefully, that is what happens.
And when are the shares likely to be credited to the demat accounts? I'm just curious about the timeline.
The shares should be credited by January 13th, the day before the listing date. It's all quite quick.
Right, very efficient timeline. Speaking of listing, when is that supposed to happen?
We expect it to be listed on both the BSE and NSE on January 14th. So just a few days after the share credit.
That's pretty soon after the allotment. One thing I'm curious about though is if they have any gray market premium, to get an idea about its possible listing price.
Well, currently, market observers are reporting that the shares are trading at par in the gray market. So the gray market premium, or GMP, is at zero right now. So that kind of suggests a flat listing for now.
Okay, that's interesting. It means there's not a lot of buzz or expectation of big gains at listing, right?
Yeah, that's right. I guess so. The GMP can fluctuate, so we will see, but the market sentiment can change closer to the listing date as more information comes in.
Well, let's talk about the company itself. I mean, what exactly does Quadrant Future Tech do? Aside from the garbage system, that is.
Well, they have a specialty cable manufacturing facility that produces fire resistant and lightweight cables for sectors like railways, defense, and aerospace. So they're not just about train control systems.
That's a pretty diverse set of industries, huh? So they're really tapping into those key sectors. What about their financial performance? Any highlights there?
Well, in FY24, they actually reported a 1% year-over-year dip in revenue, though they did see a 6% rise in their profit after tax. So it's a bit mixed. Their net proceeds from the fresh issue is planned towards funding their long-term working capital, development of electronic interlocking systems, and repayment of outstanding working capital loans.
Okay, so there's a slight dip in revenue, but an increase in profits. That's pretty interesting. And what about long-term working capital? I wonder how much they need for that.
Actually, their net proceeds from the issue will allocate approximately 149.72 crore rupees towards long-term working capital, specifically for their specialty cable division. It's quite a substantial amount.
That's a significant investment then for the cable division. And what about their plan for those electronic systems?
Right, 24.37 crore rupees is allocated for capital expenditures towards developing their electronic interlocking system. So it's clear they are also investing in technology and innovation.
Seems like they are doing a lot of R&D work, which is good to know. Now, I'm wondering, what are some of the major risks associated with this IPO?
Well, some of the key risks mentioned include promoter disputes that could impact the company's governance and operations. They also heavily rely on their Mohali facility, so that presents operational risks.
Okay, so internal issues and over reliance on a single facility. Got it. What else, though?
Their revenue is dependent on Indian Railways policies and tender awards. And they also lack long term contracts, mainly operating on purchase orders and tenders, which means their revenue stream might not be completely stable.
I guess those are big dependencies for their business. So basically, they're very reliant on Indian Railways. What about working capital needs?
Yes, they have high working capital needs, and any shortfalls could severely affect operations. It's kind of like a car needing constant fuel to keep running. If it runs out, it'll stop, right? But
That's a pretty good analogy. I see your point. High working capital need is always a concern, isn't it? So they did sign an MOU with Railtel?
yeah, they actually signed an MOU with Railtel for long term working capital funding, which could be a good thing. It's meant to ensure they have enough resources to operate.
Good point. Okay, so to sum it up, Quadrant Future Tech is focused on railway safety and specialty cables. They are also heavily involved in the Kavach system.
Yes, you are right. They have a mix of strengths and risks to consider, and they are looking to expand and secure their position in the market using the funds raised through the IPO.
Right. It's definitely something worth keeping an eye on. So basically, investors need to be aware of the risks, right?
Absolutely. Like the reliance on Indian Railways, the short term contracts, and high working capital needs are significant considerations for potential investors.
Okay, well, it seems like a company that's in an interesting space. One last question though, what do you think the future holds for them in this area?
Well, the demand for railway safety and advanced train control systems is likely to increase. And with the focus on infrastructure development, Quadron Future Tech could definitely play a significant role. So their future seems potentially promising.
Well, that is something to look out for. Thanks for breaking it all down for me. It gives a good picture, I guess. Now the investors will be considering the risks and opportunities before investing.
No problem. It's good to have a clear picture before diving into any IPO. So good luck if you are thinking of applying.
Well, thanks. And yeah, we'll see what happens with it all. Maybe we can revisit this after the listing.
Definitely. Let's check back in after the listing and see how it all pans out.